Oh yes, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak just can't get rid of his conservative enemy Boris Johnson. It doesn't matter which topic Sunak's take on and what he wants to talk about, the talk always comes back to the scandal-ridden former Prime Minister. And the Guardian newspaper commented on this: Johnson's legacy haunts Sunak. The incumbent could not bring himself to publicly criticize his former boss either, and that could damage him now. But one thing after another. Ironically, on Johnson's 59th birthday, the House of Commons in London debated a committee's devastating report on the Partygate affair and made a video on this. And the conclusion, of course, was then Prime Minister Johnson repeatedly lied to the House of Commons over the Downing Street lockdown parties and the scandal. In response, Johnson loudly berated the members of the committee, including several Conservative MPs. But he was followed by less than a handful of his confidants, because only 7 MPs voted against the acceptance of the report and against the withdrawal of Johnson's parliamentary pass in the House of Commons on Monday evening. Johnson's birthday 3 years ago had also turned out to be fateful, because it was celebrated with cake despite the corona contact restrictions. He later received a fine from the police as the first incumbent Prime Minister in British history. As it turned out, this was not an isolated incident. There was carousing and partying in government buildings while the whole country remained in lockdown otherwise. But when pictures and eyewitness reports became public, Johnson denied everything. All the rules had been followed, he claimed in Parliament. When that was no longer tenable, he stated that he had not heard anything about the parties. When it became clear that he himself had attended a party, he took the position that he had not realized that this party was illegal. And the committee didn't believe him. You all remember, it was a work meeting. The debate was now about whether Parliament would adopt the findings of the investigation and impose sanctions on Johnson. Johnson forestalled a 90-day suspension in the end, recommended by the committee, by resigning from office. When he resigned, it was still 20, but his behavior made it 90. The sentence was significantly higher because Johnson had previously vilified the committee as kangaroo court. He feels like the victim of a politically motivated witch hunt by Brexit opponents and personal enemies. Oh, Trump, yeah, that's what he reminds me of. But in the end, only a few Johnson confidants defended him, and Johnson called his people back also because there was a clear majority against him, because this time there was no parliamentary group obligation, so no whipping. And many Tory MPs, including Johnson's successor Liz Truss, never even showed up in the House of Commons. Others openly solicited approval. And Johnson's predecessor Theresa May spoke of a small but important step to restore people's trust in MPs. Well, I don't think so. Sorry, Miss May. Sunak himself missed the debate. At the same time, the Prime Minister received Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson. Sunak left open how he would vote in the event of a vote, even after multiple inquiries. It's important that the government does not interfere because it's a matter for Parliament and MPs as individuals, not as members of governments. That's what he said in an interview with ITV on Monday. But he forgot in that one that he's an MP too. Penny Mordaunt, the minister responsible for parliamentary affairs, sat almost alone on the government benches. Observers spoke of an embarrassing impression for Sunak, who had promised more integrity when he took office. The opposition immediately accused the Prime Minister of weak leadership. Sunak's caution is quite appropriate, though. Johnson has hardly any allies in the Tory faction, and according to a YouGov survey, the British as a whole no longer want to know much about the ex-Prime Minister. But the same poll also found that Johnson is still more popular with Conservative voters than Sunak, who many at the grassroots level blame for the populist demise. How do you feel about Boris? With a view on the parliamentary elections planned for 2024, this should become a crucial question for many Tory candidates. The reviled ex-Prime Minister has repeatedly made it clear that he does not consider his political career to be over. I just want to remind you what I said in another video about Winston Churchill. And I'm quite sure we will see him again. But if you want to see him again right now, perhaps, or something else about the UK, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.